where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has hidden unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure, or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
When my kids were little, I loved taking them on field trips. It got us out of the house, out of our routine, and brought us some hands-on learning that wouldn't be as meaningful if we just read about them from a book. Even if we just visited our favorite place, Hobby Lobby, to find things that started with the letter of the day, or that were round, or that were hard or soft, heavy or light, or the color pink, field trips were always an educational experience. Has God ever taken you on a field trip? Has He taken you out of your comfort zone to teach you a truth or to challenge you with a test? He took Abraham to Mount Moriah, which means the Mount of my teacher. Just a couple of chapters back, Abraham had been out on another field trip and had failed a test as he didn't trust God to take care of him and claimed that Sarah was his sister. This was a new test, one for both Abraham and Isaac. So how did they pass this test? God told Abraham in Genesis 22, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall tell you." So Abraham arose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose, and went to the place of which God had told him. Abraham obeyed immediately. He had a clear call, a clear direction from God, and he acted upon it without hesitation. He didn't postpone it by piously saying he'd pray about it. He didn't decide that it could wait until later, and it didn't say he discussed it with his wife. Now, I'm fairly sure if she's anything like me, she would have at least tried to talk him out of it, if he'd give her half a chance. Another thing is, he brought everything with him that he would need. He was completely prepared. He wouldn't get to the top of the mountain and say, "Oh, I forgot the knife. Sorry, God, I guess I can't obey." Or, "This place is all desert and rocks. There's no wood for a fire. Oh, I guess it just won't work out." Nope, he was all in. In verse 5, it says, "Then Abraham said to his young men, 'Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you.'" He left his servants. It was like he didn't want anyone to distract him or stop him from doing what God told him to do. Sometimes when God calls you to do something, it isn't exactly logical, and well-meaning friends or family will try to discourage you, just as Peter tried to discourage Jesus when he announced that he would suffer and be killed, or when friends tried to discourage Paul from going to Jerusalem because they knew he'd be delivered into the hands of the Gentiles. Abraham was sure of what God had told him to do. He didn't want to be distracted or dissuaded. And when we know exactly what God wants us to do, we want to be sure that we will not have a chance of being distracted or dissuaded. Abraham told his servants that he and Isaac would both be back. And later he tells Isaac that God would provide the lamb. He didn't know what God was about to do, but he did know that God had previously told him all of the promises he had given. The land, the descendants, the blessings would all be transferred to Isaac. At this point, he knows 2 things for sure. God wanted him to sacrifice Isaac, and Isaac would still be around later to be heir to the promises. Abraham followed through with these preparations. He didn't chicken out at the last minute. In fact, verse 10 says that Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. He was going to do it. But, and we love that but the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Abraham would have done it had God not stopped him. He knew it, and God knew it. Abraham had passed the test. But what about Isaac? His test was a little different. His was a matter of obeying his father. Neither God nor Abraham had explained what was going on to Isaac. Yet from what we read, he obeyed his father and let him bind him and put him on the altar. Some say he was over the age of 20, just by the words that are used here. And Abraham was an old man. Isaac could easily have overpowered him, but he was obedient to his father. As I've told my youth Sunday school class, obedience to your parents when you're young is practice for obedience to God when you're on your own. Both passed their tests and learned a lot on this field trip. What have you learned on field trips that God has taken you on? I'd love to hear about them. You can write to me at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. This is Carla Early. Thanks for listening. And remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.